Green books just feel so romantic to me. I don't know about
Yeah.
And Precious, I'm going to borrow your microphone.
Okay.
I will give it back. Hi everyone, thank you so kindly for joining us. I'm Cara Johnson, I'm the event coordinator for Green Apple Books. Welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm so glad tonight to welcome Dr. Marie Thouin for a celebration of her book, What is Compersion? Let's give a hand for Marie. She is joined tonight by Precious Bose. Let's give a hand for Precious as well. Wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. You could be anywhere on a Monday night in the summer, and you decided to be here, so I appreciate that. Thank you for joining us both in person and online. Hello, online audience. I'm waving to the camera if you cannot see me, or see the camera rather. We open each of our events with a land acknowledgement. We are broadcasting from San Francisco. We are operating on Ramaytush land, and we think that land acknowledgement requires action, and so we encourage you to donate either your time or monetary means to an Indigenous organization each time you hear a land acknowledgement. And we have details specifically about the Ramaytush Land Trust at the back desk. You can find them there if you want to learn more about how to participate in this project of rematriation. A very brief business before I let these two take over. Now is a good time to silence your cell phones if you have not already. I think I heard that picture taking is okay. Yes. Picture taking is okay. So feel free to do that. Just don't take a call. Let's not do that. Please do check out our full event calendar online at greenapplebooks.com. We have a really great season ahead of us, including the event you are currently attending. The restroom is behind me. It is available after the event, not during the event for obvious reasons. If you need to know how to get there, do let me know, and I'll gladly help you. We have copies of What is Compersion at the front register. You can find them there. If you've been here before, you've certainly heard me say that when you buy books from us, not only do you support us as an independent bookstore, you support the authors who put so much work into making these books, and then you get to have a book, which might be the best part. So if you're able, we always appreciate it. And I also saw so many of you already bought books, so thank you so much. We appreciate it. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the two folks who are joining us tonight. First, Precious Bose has been an active member of the San Francisco Bay Area polyamorous community for the past 10 years. Her professional background blends philanthropy, mindfulness, nonprofit management, and community building. She is passionate about communication, love, and building a more compassionate world through big and small actions. Let's give one more hand for Precious Bose. And last but most certainly not least, Marie Thouin, PhD, has writing that's been featured in several magazines and podcasts, including Elle, Savage Lovecast, and Multi-Amory. Thouin has also published seminal research studies, the first encyclopedia entry on compersion, that's cool, and is the creator of whatiscompersion.com, founder of Love Insight, a mindful dating and relationship coaching practice. Dr. Thouin supports and guides people of all backgrounds and relational orientations to create intentional and vibrant love lives. Her book, What is Compersion? Understanding Positive Empathy in Consensually Non-Monogamous Relationships, the first ever comprehensive scholarly book on compersion, is the reason we are here tonight. Let's give one more hand for Dr. Marie Thouin.
Hi everyone, thank you.
I'm going to do my best to talk into the mic.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for our live audience. Thank you for our virtual audience. This is really exciting. Marie, yay!
Thank you so much.
So, I met Marie like 8 or 9 years ago at a poly potluck. I was a last minute effort with a partner at the time to just start to learn about ourselves and what we were doing. And we heard about this word compersion at that potluck. And I remember thinking about it always. And so I'm so excited that you wrote this book. So thank you for including me. Thank you for doing the research, doing the writing. I've been writing in it, with it, listening to it, and sitting with it, and I'm just really excited to be here. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you
really,
so much.
really, yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is so fun. It feels in a way like a full circle moment because, you know, when I first met you, it was also some of my first real investigations into poly communities and events and really starting to learn about like who are the people who do relationships differently outside of mononormativity or the monogamous paradigm of default relationships. And here we are, you know, 8-9 years later with a book that really just distills all of what I've learned since.
Well, and we'll dive more into this too as we're talking, because Marie's going to read parts of the book. But I just also, Compersion is just so compassion oriented and empathy and love, and I just think the world needs all of that, whether it's non-monogamy or not. It's like whatever it serves you, and so it's just so powerful, and it really has so much meaning. Yeah. And thank you to the bookstore for having us. Thank you, Green Apple Books. It's so lovely to be around literature and paper. Oh my gosh, I love paper. I love books. I love the index cards. I love notebooks. This actually is not the notebook that I put all of my notes in. I left my notebook in San Jose. But this is me learning. But I do love a good book. So please. Without further ado, will you do us a nice service and share some of your book?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with a little part of the book, a little reading. And, you know, I've been doing a few book signings and talks lately, and usually I kind of have been reading the same little snippets. But today, actually, while I was on my way here, I was listening to a conversation between two friends who were talking about the first chapter of my book about jealousy. And that inspired me to actually read a little snippet about jealousy. Because I think something I want to say right off the bat is that my goal is never to shame jealousy or never to encourage people to repress it or to call it bad, because that doesn't work. That's not how compersion happens. It's not by repressing jealousy. And to the opposite, it's actually about embracing the dance and the malleability of jealousy and embracing all of what is. So I'm going to read a little quote called "The Malleability of Jealousy." If jealousy is at least in part socially constructed, individuals have a certain amount of power and agency to intentionally alter their subjective experience of it. Several of my participants exemplified this by speaking of their relationship to jealousy and compersion as a fluid dance that could change over time and depending on contexts. To illustrate how intentional meaning-making could impact one's emotional outcomes, Alexis, a 26-year-old professional cuddlist and event program director, and by the way, I'm using pseudonyms to protect people's confidentiality, explained how, quote, raw emotional arousal from their partner's intimate engagement with others could lead to either compersion or jealousy, and that they could exercise freedom and agency in determining the emotional and psychological impacts of these contexts. And then I'm going to read the quote from my participant, who said, "There will be the seed of envy or jealousy, however it got there. Whether it's socialized in or whether I would have it regardless, there's a little bit of a seed. And there's a gateway. And when I'm tired, sometimes I'll just go into the envy or jealousy, or if I don't feel like using resources. With that seed, though, I can choose pleasure. I can choose to tap into the pleasure my partner is feeling. I can choose to tap into the love that I feel for them and for their other partner, because I like to have some sort of relationship or connection with that other partner. And so it just feels good. Because I'm choosing pleasure, I'm choosing love. The way that I view jealousy is a mix of emotions and stories that tells us about our childhood and about our fears about ourselves and our partners. And they're really good teachers for personal growth. So teaching agency about what stories we have and how to work with them, and also agency about what to do with jealousy and envy. They're both stories. What story are you going to choose? So I'm just going to read one more quote in that same section from another participant as a contrast of someone else who actually talks to this malleability between jealousy and compersion. And I think that's fascinating. So that is someone that I interviewed at 5 years interval. One time in 2018 and one time in 2023. And what's interesting is that in 2018, the first interview, she was saying how she experienced quite a bit of compersion, almost always compersion. And then in 2023, she was saying that both compersion and jealousy had evolved in their own way. So it was not about suppressing jealousy and just always feeling compersion for her. And let's hear what she had to say. It feels like compersion has gotten in some ways harder, but it feels connected to me being more open to the complexity and diversity of my human experience and feelings, rather than it being less accessible. I think one thing I really appreciate about this current relationship is that we just practice being really honest about shadow. So recently, I had my first full intimate experience with somebody else. And it was beautiful for us to connect about that, and then him to just be like, okay, I'm feeling like my full caveman that wants to rip this other person apart. And then he just channeled that, and I could receive it, and we played with it. And we did this whole thing where I told him all the ways that this other experience was way better. And then I did the flip, and I told him I have all the ways that this other experience was way worse, like reaffirm. Anyways, it was just super fun to play with. And I'm finding a lot of life in doing the inverse of compersion. I find my inner cave person that wants to rip this other person apart and channel that with my intimate person, rawr. And like, let that free the shadow parts, and that actually enables a more authentic compersion to emerge. There's less of, oh, I should feel compersion, so I'm going to feel compersion right now, and there's more permission to feel whatever. Yeah, just wanted to start with that to kind of normalize, like, it's good to feel whatever, and to have that freedom with our emotions, not to make compersion into an orthodoxy.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. What I love most is you had such a diverse group of participants, and so the perspectives in the book really do carry that value and weight of like sitting with our feelings, our uncomfortableness. It's okay. And, you know, it's always been okay, but we're living in a certain day and age where it really needs to be okay. Because, you know, we all have to take care of ourselves and have that, like, self-love and self-respect. So I'll just start by asking, can you tell us what is compersion?
Ooh, good question. I wrote a book about it. So compersion actually, to put very simply, it's our wholehearted participation in the happiness of others. But to put it a little bit less simply, I actually did write the first encyclopedia definition with my colleague, Dr. Sharon Flicker, last year. And we had a lot of conversations about, well, you know, what is it? Like, how do we put the words on that definition that actually will encompass all of what we found in our research? And that led us to 3 definitions, or a 3-part definition. The first one being what we typically think about when we think about compersion in a non-monogamous context, which is the range of positive emotions that we feel in relation to our partner's other intimate connections. So that's the kind of general poly definition of compersion. I'm happy when you're happy with somebody else.
Yeah.
The second definition, though, is the broad range of thoughts, attitudes, behaviors that we might feel in relation to our partner's other relationships. So taking compersion out of just being an emotion, but actually broadening it to also those thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors so that we can have an orientation towards compersion or a compersion ethic or a compersion behavior or way to show up, even when we're not fully in the emotion of it. So even when I'm jealous, I can still be a compersive person. And then the third definition is taking it out of non-monogamy and broadening it to other contexts. So compersion being the broad range of positive emotions, attitudes, behaviors, and thoughts we might experience in relation to somebody else's positive experience in any context. Yeah. Since we don't have another word for it in English, I think it's warranted.
Yeah. Leading up to this event, Marie and I had been talking over the phone and on Zoom, and it was one of the examples I thought of the broader, that third kind of broad definition. I was thinking like, you're at the grocery store and you're kind of like in a hurry, and so you get ready to switch lines, and then all of a sudden that checkout line is going a lot faster, and you see the other person leave, and you're like, you either are like kind of like, man, or you're kind of just like, I have a very zen moment because I live next to the chaotic Safeway of Market Street. So I just let it go. You're kind of like, you know what? Sail on, man. Good job. Good job. I should have just been patient. I should have just sat there with that feeling of frustration, of hurry, right? So that generalness. So that's how in my mind I generalized it. Or like I talked about it with a friend the other day about why am I so happy? I love when my friends go on vacation, but then like I want to be there. I said, yeah, you want to feel that compersion. Like I feel happy for their joy, and so thinking about like the broader terms and the more specific in non-monogamy terms, what inspired you to write the book? What unique perspectives do you bring to the book?
Mm-hmm. So in 2014 is when I first encountered the word compersion, and it was a conference called The Future of Monogamy and Non-Monogamy. And it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, I've never really been on board with a traditional version of romantic love, but I've always been a bit of a sappy romantic also, and I could never figure out a philosophy or an attitude towards love that really I could subscribe to. And when I encountered the concept of compersion, like that kind of love that empowers someone else to be fully fulfilled rather than tries to control another person to do the convenient thing for us, I just really got inspired to learn more. Like, who are those people who experience compersion? How do they do it? Like, when does it happen? So it led me to eventually, I was already in a PhD program at that point at California Institute of Integral Studies, and I knew I was going to study intimate relationships. That was always a passionate, thing of mine. But I just had this feeling like, compersion is the thing I really want to study. So I went on to find who I would call like compersion ninjas.
Okay.
Among us, people who have, experienced compersion in non-monogamous contexts, where typically these are the hardest contexts to experience compersion. Not to diminish, compersion in friendship or in business or other relationships. It can be amazing to do that too, but I think in our intimate lives is where like it's kind of like if I did a study on muscle building, I would go interview those bodybuilders, who lift like tons of weight. Yeah. And the unique perspectives that I bring are just, first of all, I want to say it's mostly the perspectives of my research participants, because that's the kind of research I did, is qualitative research and all of those stories. But it's also the perspective of relationship diversity, the idea that there's not a one-size-fits-all to love. And that's always been a big value of mine.
Yeah, I really liked how you are in the book. It's layered, right? So it's layered with the theoretical knowledge, but then that qualitative richness of so many different identities and perspectives and lived experiences, which really amount to a lot. And then you weave it in so nicely with current research and philosophies. And do you want to touch upon that a little bit more about like what kind of insights and discoveries there were?
Yeah, in terms of the current research, or more like my research, or both?
More like in the current research, I'm thinking of more like of the positive empathy and like this, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, my book is definitely research based. So every time I bring in a topic, feel free to come in and sit if you want. So yeah, like what I found is ultimately like the first research question that I had was, what is compersion? And then the second one was, what are the factors that promote it versus hinder it? And within that first question of what is compersion, the two themes that emerged were positive empathy and gratitude. And something interesting that I discovered is that there is very little research on positive empathy in the field of psychology. There is a ton of research on negative empathy or empathy for negative experiences. Like pretty much the whole field of psychology talks about, empathy for like sad things and just, like sharing the suffering of somebody else. The positive empathy is something kind of new, and there is so much potential in terms of how it creates bonds within people, and I experience that all the time, like when we even celebrate, people who are coming here to celebrate this book, for example, like they are expressing their positive empathy to me, and I just feel closer to them. And I feel like life is full of those moments of getting closer to people by experiencing that positive empathy.
Yeah, that's really, I didn't think about that, but I think, I'm thinking more like, too, like, you talk about some of the different philosophies of, even, like, of Buddhism, and then, but then also thinking about present day, and then I guess I kind of want to focus back on gratitude, too.
Yeah.
Like, the chapter on gratitude, I think I read it twice, because I was just like, oh, this is so lovely, like, I forget that when you're having moments of jealousy, that grounding yourself in gratitude helps. It doesn't devalue the jealousy. You can still feel jealous, and that you're cave woman or man or they them energy, right? Like, but you having that gratitude like really grounds you. So,
yeah. I mean, I think oftentimes like jealousy is kind of at the core of it, like this feeling of scarcity and like not having or something being taken away from me. And then gratitude is this antidote. It's this like, oh yeah, no, I actually have, and I have something to be grateful for, and I'm not empty, and I'm not just like deprived and taken advantage of. So it can be very balancing. And actually in my coaching practice, when I work with people, who are non-monogamous and really want to cultivate compersion, an exercise that I often give is to write down and be fully conscious of what are the things that you're benefiting from. Like what do you have to be grateful for in this relationship? Whether it's sometimes like not having the pressure to fulfill all of your partner's needs or just enjoying the kind of growth that comes with non-monogamy, and you both growing and being able to benefit from that, or having a richer sexual life, a richer emotional life. And I would apply like that exercise about focusing on gratitude to any other circumstance where we might want to cultivate compersion.
Yes, so tell me more about the coaching practice. So your coaching practice is Love Insight Dating, right? Follow her on Instagram. And it's really great. Lots of different episodes. And so do you work, in your work and with the book, are you reaching not just non-monogamous couples? Are you working with monogamous couples?
Yeah, it's very diverse. Like the premise of my practice is really that love is not a one-size-fits-all, and that relationship diversity is kind of the name of the game, like intentional relationships rather than default relationships. And I just want to also give a shout out to my coaching clients, because without them, without my coaching practice, this book wouldn't be as rich as it is now. Because when I did my study for my PhD, like I heard mostly the kind of glorious experiences of compersion that people wanted to share. Like people who self-select as research participants oftentimes are like, yeah, like this is how I experienced compersion. And they, I mean, there was also some, like stories of jealousy, and I asked them about the challenging emotions too. But when I started coaching a lot of non-monogamous couples, I also started seeing that sometimes compersion can get weaponized, or the concept itself can get weaponized by people who want to enforce compersion on their partners.
Like being competitive, or or more like you're not they're like you're not doing it right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like sometimes couples would come and one person would say like, hey, my partner is not experiencing enough compersion for me, can you fix them? Fix them, Dr. Marie.
It kind of goes back to them not really validating their feelings, right? Like
Exactly.
they're allowed to have weeks of jealousy if that's what they have to feel. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, okay.
Right. And, we don't want to weaponize jealousy either.
Yeah.
Because, of course,
Yeah.
people do that a lot.
Yeah.
But also, I think there is a pitfall there with also sometimes, shaming ourselves for not, feeling embodied emotional compersion all the time. I see a lot of people feeling like, I'm a bad polyamorous person because I'm not always in a state of compersion and I'm still experiencing jealousy. Like, what's wrong with me? So just really moving away from that to okay, can we have jealousy without blame and weaponization of that either? Can we not weaponize anything? Don't weaponize that shit.
Yes, amen. Yeah. So can you mentioned grounding yourself in gratitude. Is there another exercise maybe you could give the audience an example that to kind of promote your inner compersion if you were wanting to do so or wanting to practice?
Yeah, and actually in my book there's a whole chapter that's called Can Compersion Be Learned? And it's maybe the most practical, TLDR, too long didn't read chapter in the book. And one of the things that I talk about is the power of community. And a lot of what we experience comes from, seeing it modeled in others. And I had one participant in particular who said that, he never really experienced compersion with his wife when they first opened a relationship until they were surrounded by people who modeled compersion. And he said literally something like, well, when I saw people just being fine with their partner cuddling or making out with someone else in front of them, and I saw that it could be fine, I just let it be fine. He was able to find that resonance inside of himself and let it be fine because he saw it modeled in someone else. And I think, it's often the first advice that I give to folks who come, wanting to open their relationship or having just opened their relationship but feeling isolated about it is seek community, seek people who understand and who live outside of that mononormative paradigm already so that you can feel validated in your identity and it can become pride. It's a little bit like LGBTQ identities. If you are coming out as queer, of course you want to have community. You want to not feel alone. You don't want to be just with, maybe a group of people who don't really get it or might kind of low-key shame you. So it's kind of similar.
Yeah. Well, and then I think thinking about other theories weaving in, and I know in my own non-monogamy, it's important sometimes for me to not if I just sit alone and make up stories, I can make up stories all day about other people, situations, what's happening, what are they doing so much for fun, and then as soon as you see it or meet them, and sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it's the opposite. It's the opposite, the pendulum swings the other way, and you're like, oh, no, I don't want to see that, I don't want to do that. You guys, keep that to yourself, but it helps a little bit to have that option of community to talk about it. And then, have those practices in place, have the community in place. And I think, I hope the world gets there more because it's hard. I think it's hard to access the groups. I feel like we're very lucky in our bubble of San Francisco, of course, the Bay Area.
Yeah.
But I think even in other places, it can be challenging. Yeah.
I actually was thinking, would you like to read the quote that you provided for that book? the loyalty to self.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So, and I know you did it on Instagram today,
I
but
did,
maybe
yeah. Do
it
you
could
have it
be-
marked in your? I can grab my mark.
Let me find it. But yeah, Precious was part of my study.
You're actually. I
Just
have it
wanted
marked.
to- Oh, you did?
Yeah, because I had.
Because we talked about the, community part of it, we talked about the relational part of it, but there's also a whole section on relationship within self. And within that is being able to being, self-resourced and, drinking from your own cup. And Precious gave a really wonderful quote.
Actually, I think it's this one. I think it is this one. Yeah, so this is from chapter 7, and I'm quoted as saying, "It would be more challenging to feel authentic compersion for someone if you didn't have a certain grounding of self-love in your heart, for just yourself to start. I think people that have a certain amount of self-love often carry a certain amount of confidence. I would imagine it would be a lot harder to feel compersion for your partner if you're internally criticizing yourself." That's actually a little different than the one I read, I think, on Instagram earlier.
But that's a really good one.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
This is great.
So then I'll read one more because I did like the other one. Oh no, that was the one. That was
Okay, great.
Yeah. So, that idea of self-love. Well, and I also just think about this. I just really do like carrying that principle of self-love, self-compassion, self-worth, right? Wherever you're at, if you got out of bed and you brushed your teeth and you said hi to your cat, you're doing great. You did a good job. Don't worry about it. Like, you can always start over again tomorrow. So I think that you have to do that with compersion. Some days it's gonna work. You're gonna knock it out of the park. You're gonna see your partner hold hands with someone else, and you're gonna be like, "Oh my god, that's so cute." You're gonna want to get the other person flowers or something fun. And then some days you're gonna be like, "I wanted to go with them to that restaurant. Why did they do that?" So I think it's like having that look. So with that, I'm curious to know, like, what is next for Dr. Marie?
Well, I definitely am super duper enjoying talking about this book and sharing about it and just really looking at the wisdom from it. And I do want to write a next book that is going to be more of a mainstream book about compersion, kind of broadening it to a wider audience, outside of maybe like the more like academic style of book. I want to broaden the message, and I still really want to get that word in the dictionary. I don't know why they haven't put it in yet. I've emailed them a few times. They keep saying, not yet. It's not used widely enough, but come on.
Also, Siri doesn't recognize it, changes it to compression.
Compression, conversion.
Anything else, the autocorrect is just not gonna do it. It's not gonna do it. Yeah,
literally. I've been writing about this for 10 years. Goddamn autocorrect. Can't you get it?
Well, so I have one fun question. So we're going to be doing a Q&A. So if the audience has questions, please let us know. If anyone's watching on YouTube, we can filter your questions as well. But so I was talking with my cousin about it this morning, and we were talking about the book, and I was like, "Oh, I got a good one for her." And it's not on. It was she didn't see it yet. But I was like, once this becomes an audio book, who would you have be your reader of your book? Because I thought of my person. So if so my background is in communication, and I wrote a festival identity paper, and I was thinking, who would I have read my audio festival identity paper? And I was like, it would be the guy from Cars. It would be Owen Wilson. And I could just picture his voice. I don't know why. I was like, that's who would do it for me. So do you have someone in mind that you would have?
Wow.
What celebrity would read your audio compersion book?
Oh my gosh.
It's a hard one.
That is a hard one.
I almost feel like, I don't know. Maybe the audience can have some good ideas too. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if anyone here has listened to the book on audio, Sex at Dawn. No. Well, it was actually one of my favorite books at the beginning of like, like Awakening to Relationship Diversity and Non-Monogamy. It's a really great book. And the reader is, has such a big personality about it. Like she really takes you on a journey. Yeah. So I don't know what her name is, but she would be perfect.
Okay.
That said, I do kind of feel like it could be fun to read it myself, because when I listen to audiobooks, I love when the writer actually reads the book.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Maybe you'll be.
I might need a little bit of speech training, smooth out my.
I think this book tour is probably gonna do it. I would say that, or I know this is a really random one, but maybe like Sandra Bullock.
Whoa!
Right?
I just picture her.
I just picture her voice being really kind of calm. Like I feel like she could. I don't know. I think she could really own that. I don't know. That's
or maybe someone who has this kind of like elder energy, someone who just makes you feel so comfortable, who you can kind of tell in their voice they've gone through it all.
Martha Stewart? I only say that because I've been watching her do on the Olympics. She's been talking on the Olympics. Anyways.
Yeah, let's DM that. Martha. Martha, I have a new job for you. I hope you will give me a discount.
Alan coming.
Yeah.
Are there any questions from our live audience we can take? Or?
I got one.
Yes.
So you were saying that compersion is not a question, is not a word in the English language. Can you think of another language that has a word like compersion, and what is that word and what does it mean in English?
Yes, thank you for that question. So there's two languages that I know of that have words that mean compersion. One is Sanskrit, and the word is mudita. And it actually, in Buddhism, it's considered one of the 4 qualities of the enlightened person, along with compassion, equanimity, and loving kindness. And compersion or mudita is literally translated into sympathetic joy. And they consider a spiritual quality because it's about getting out of the zero-sum mentality of, more for you is less for me, and actually like, we're all connected and we can all have a win-win. The other language that I know of is German. Most people have heard the word Schadenfreude, which means being happy at somebody else's misery. But the opposite is Freudenfreude.
That sounds like, to me, like French fries and dip. I don't know.
That sounds delicious. It's feeling happy
delicious.
at somebody else's happiness.
Well, delicious is also that part of that joy. Yeah.
I delight in your happiness, my dear.
I like that. Anyone else from our live audience have a question for our wonderful author tonight?
Sure. Do you got any tips for people who have like an anxious or like avoidant attachment style when they're trying to experience compersion?
Yes. And a lot of my book talks about, how to cultivate your relationship, basically like let me start again. What does it take to cultivate a fertile terrain for compersion at the relational level? And a lot of that is creating safety within the relationship. And everyone will have different strategies around that. Some people have agreements around always it being okay to ask for reassurance and really like unshaming jealousy and just making it always okay to say like, hey babe, I want you to be happy, but I'm having big feelings. Can you give me a hug? Or can you tell me something romantic? Or can you remind me that you're not leaving? And having those communication strategies can really help, as well as sometimes having rituals around, let's say your partner is going out on a date. Maybe you want a little pre-date ritual or a little post-date ritual to make sure that you stay connected and on the same page. So everyone might need something different, but I would strategize basically with your partner around what kind of communication makes you feel safe. That would be my first advice.
Yeah, building the foundation to the house that you want with that person or with those people.
Yeah.
And then there was another question.
Yeah, I've been hearing you talk about non-monogamous couples. What about singles having multiple partners? Is that one of your areas of interest?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, I always try to watch out for couple centricity, and I know that the majority of people who are talking about non-monogamy are usually talking from the perspective of opening up a previously monogamous couple, but thank you for bringing attention to people who might be solo polyamorous or being, unpartnered and non-monogamous. And compersion in those situations, I would say, follows the same roadmap. There isn't necessarily like a huge difference, except for sometimes in those strategies, like you're not necessarily trying to create that same kind of security with a partner that, you might have with a partner of 20 years. But you still want to create the sense of security and the sense of like, you want to be able to have transparency and good communication with whoever you are interacting with. And I want to say something also about hierarchy, because that's a topic that comes up a lot in non-monogamous circles is, is it okay to have, like a form of privileging a couple over other partners? And to me, it often comes down to, are people competing for the same spot? There's people who are unpartnered, maybe solo polyamorous, like they don't want to be with a nesting partner, but, they're not trying to get into that position. They're not trying to fill that role. So it can be consensual. They might prefer to date someone who is already part of an established couple, and then they can have compersion for that relationship. So I'm just kind of riffing a little bit on that, but do you have any more specific questions or?
No.
Okay, but thank you for bringing that up, because that's, it's so easy to fall into just talking about couples. Thank you.
Do we have anything from online that we can?
Not yet, just some clapping emojis.
Clapping emojis. Thank you, audience. Yeah. So yeah, thinking of, and also just thinking, can you tell me more then about monogamous couples and just monogamous people and using compersion?
Yeah, I could actually read a little section that I have in the introduction about how does this book apply to monogamous people.
Yeah, please.
Mm-hmm. So in my coaching practice, I have often witnessed monogamous couples struggling with envy, jealousy, or competitiveness, even in the absence of threats to sexual or romantic exclusivity. For example, some folks might feel that their partner spends excessive energy at work or with their friends and insufficient time cultivating their intimate relationship. At times, they might also feel uncomfortable around the depth of connection their partner is having with a friend or a colleague, even when that connection is platonic. Or they may grow envious of their partner's success in areas where they feel insecure or disadvantaged. It may be extremely difficult to share one's partner's happiness in such instances, especially when one feels neglected, left out, or under-resourced. While these scenarios can cause painful rifts, examining them through the lens of compersion may help monogamous folks build more mutually supportive relationships. As I elaborate on in this book, the solution is not to shun jealousy or envy or to pressure oneself or others to feel compersion, but rather to use these difficult emotions to illuminate the places where one's needs, especially those related to inner and relational security, are not met. With this information, one can become aware of what it would take to meet these needs both individually and as a team with one's partners. Yeah.
I also want to know, with that, what surprised you most about the research overall? Was there a moment when you were like, oh, I wasn't expecting that?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Well, one thing that I think was a good surprise was when I realized that there was this distinction between attitudinal compersion and embodied compersion. what I described at the beginning with the 3-part definition, embodied compersion being this more like emotional form of compersion, and attitudinal being more of that orientation to relationships and how we behave. It was kind of liberating because it could make it so that we could choose compersion and choose to show up with compersion without necessarily always being in that emotional state.
Okay.
And so, I think that was one of the biggest contributions of the book, and maybe the most surprising.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it looks like we have a question from our online audience.
Rachel asks, how do you ground yourself in gratitude when you are feeling jealousy at the same time? Can you give specific examples?
How do you ground yourself in gratitude when you are feeling jealousy at the same time? Can give specific examples. That's the question from Rachel. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. Well, oftentimes I think we get caught in an either or feeling, that we have to either feel jealousy or compersion, or we either have to feel gratitude or scarcity. And I try to never try to erase what's already there. And I think to ground ourselves in gratitude, can be done even as we're experiencing intense, challenging emotions, to even remember, okay, I might be feeling a lot of scarcity right now, but let me write a list of what I'm grateful for. And it might sound performative or, fake even in the moment, but it can kind of rewire our, emotional dynamics to say well, it's not mutually exclusive. Or even to give something to somebody. If I feel particularly deprived, one of the things that I can do to ground myself in gratitude and a dynamic of, I have something to give, is to actually give somebody a gift or a hug or a kind word. To actually make it into an action that can sort of remind my whole system that gratitude is still available, even from that darker place.
Yeah. Yes. I'm smiling internally because I'm thinking of Oprah's favorite thing, right? It's having a gratitude journal. I think it's always really important, no matter what phase of life you're in. And then in my personal experience with my my metamor, right? So my partner's partner, who I not had any sexual relationships with, but they're just such a good gift giver, and I do feel a little competitive because I'm I can't keep. You give me one more beautiful amethyst, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. So I'm also very grateful. It's very sweet, and it's just it's so thoughtful, and I'm just I'm always blown away. And even now, I'm still friends with this couple, and I'm not in the couple. I'm not part of that couple, and it's so it's just that holding that community, that space, and having that gratitude. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Now I have another question.
Yeah, please.
Did you also study triads, especially when it comes to raising a child? And then Precious just brought up a new word. That
metamor.
And then I wonder if there are other new vocabulary words, paramour,
metamor. So there's metamor. So the question was talking about triads, right? So thinking about how does compersion affect triads, maybe people co-parenting.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did not study triads specifically, but I did have some participants in my study that were in a quad, a 4-person closed relationship. And oftentimes compersion would show up, because there was this sense of inclusion. And I think in general, inclusion is a very key word for explaining and understanding compersion, because when people feel excluded or they don't have access to what is happening over there, or they feel pushed away, it's really hard to share somebody else's joy. But if you're if you're in a triad or a quad or a connected polyamorous network, or another term would be a polycule.
Or I think of also they call it kitchen table polyamory. Mm-hmm. So everyone has a seat. I really like that idea too of kind of changes that hierarchy. Like yes, you might have multiple primary people, right? So we have plenty of love to give. Everyone has plenty of love, but do we have enough time? Like this, And so, thinking about that. And I don't know if you wanted to say more. I have a quote I can read too.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is another one of one of the quotes you quoted me. This is chapter 11, I said, I've been grappling with labeling myself as polyamorous because I'm also at an age where I'm thinking more about family planning, and I keep thinking about how am I going to do this? How am I going to co-parent? How am I going to, do something traditional and then go back to my polyamorous roots? Like, what's the plan? I don't really have one yet. So for me, this was maybe a couple years ago. So now I still don't have the plan, but I do really believe like it takes a village to have a family and have those rituals. And I can see it being really helpful having other individuals and other adults around to inspire your children if you decided to have one while you're participating and being open.
And I actually want to just add a little something about people who have children or might even have elder parents or people that they need to take care of, and just like a lot of responsibilities. That can actually be a big boon to compersion when there's more people to take care of each other. I've heard that from people who have children sometimes and
maybe less burnout.
Yeah, exactly. Just more people to take care of the kids, or people who are aging, and there's just more people in the relational ecosystem to take care of each other, rather than the nuclear family model where it's just like, it's you and me, baby, it's 24/7, and that's all we have. So, yeah, I just want to mention that, like, sometimes the gratitude comes from real benefits that people are receiving from extended families.
And thank you for all your thoughtful questions. I wish I had my other notebook, because I did, as I was reading, keep a notes of all these new words in this book that I'm like, I hadn't heard of this. I hadn't heard of sympathy.
Sympathetic joy.
Sympathetic joy. And, I can't say the German word, but French fries and dip. And so with that, we have time for one more question.
You raised your hand.
Oh, yeah. I was about to say, like, we're in this bookstore and it's just like this environment where we're talking about compersion, but like people's support systems and families and the outside world is like infinitely more like complicated and problematic than this like wonderful safe space to talk about this sort of thing. Like, I like wonder like how you sort of like translate these sort of like concepts and ideas to like something that's more like traditional. Like, how would you tell your like your conservative family members or people who aren't necessarily of the same ideal, or even explaining this type of concept to like your friends who are close to you but still have absolutely like zero or no concept, or have never really been exposed to the even idea of what is CNM now?
So
whatever.
That's a great final question in the sense of, so how do you have the discussion about your polyamorous roots, your compersion, with maybe a more normative mind of thinking from your families and friends?
Well, little by little, and I want to talk from a perspective of coming out. I do have a chapter in the book that is about coming out, compersion, and pride. And there's a lot of literature that has to do with LGBTQ identities and what it takes to come out. And it's a process of first coming out to ourselves and uprooting some of the mononormative conditioning that we've been given, and actually being clear and not uprooting some of the shame that we might have inside. Because sometimes, I think people make the mistake maybe of talking about it with people who are antagonistic before they're really clear within themselves, and then they receive a lot of negative feedback like, well, aren't you afraid? What is it going to do to your kids? What is it going to do if you break up? Blah blah blah. And that can kind of set you back. in your own coming out process. So I encourage people to take their time and to do it when they are feeling ready and calm within themselves. Like, I don't think you owe everyone, like, to explain your personal relationships, to people who might be antagonistic to that. But once you do it, I think there's ways to explain in ways that people can understand, oftentimes giving examples like, well, people have multiple kids and they love all of their kids. Like, they can't be asked to choose just one, and love is not this limited resource. And again, to use the LGBTQ analogy, like, people learn by exposure, by being exposed to people they love who are living outside of normativity. And, sometimes it's about being patient to, be available to, answer questions and so on.
Yeah, I agree. I think also, like, it's like, it's your relationship, so no one really can, they can have an opinion, but that's theirs to keep, and that's always easier said than done, though, right? Like, having those, like, judgments projected is hard and tiring. And so, yeah, being patient with yourself, with other people, as we say in sex-positive places, don't yuck my yum, all right? So, I think the practice in that is taking your time, knowing that it's a growing and evolving society, and that, like, everything is fluid, from your compersion to your gender to your sexuality. Like, whatever gives you grace and mercy, you should allow that space if it feels safe and consensual to you.
Or send them my book.
Yes. Oh, I also wanted to just say real fast is so where else can we find the book? So we can find the book in the beautiful Green Apple Books, which we love.
At the register.
And
bonus, you get an autograph.
yes, exactly. An autograph book. Is there other places people can source your information?
Yeah. So I have a website that's literally whatiscompersion.com. So you can find me there. Please join my mailing list. I always announce my events and my new research and publications when they emerge. I have an Instagram that I'm very active on. It's Love Inside Dating. So please stay in touch. I also have a email list sign up sheet at the register. So if you're interested in keeping in touch, I don't, send a lot of spam. It's just really informational emails about my events and my research. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Round of applause for beautiful Dr. Marie. Thank you. Thank you, live audience. Thank you, online. I hope you have a great evening.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you so much, Precious, for doing this with me and being connected all these years.
I'm just so happy. Yeah.
And thank you, Car, for welcoming us at Green Apple. It's been so great. And thank you to everyone for showing up. This means the world to me, literally. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just here to facilitate one more round of applause. You've been so great to work with. I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you all for joining us tonight. It's really fun. I hope you learned something. I learned something. That's good. Thank you also to we had a really active online audience. So thanks to you folks as well. Like they said, we have books at the front register. You can find them there.
Wonderful.
And Marie, I'm going to have you at the back desk here signing books.
Sounds good.
If you have any other questions, let me
Get
know.
ready for some love notes in your books.
Yes, thank you. Share the love. Thank you, everyone. Yay, thank you. Yeah, this is so fun. Oh, I'm so happy for you. It's so amazing. And it's just one bite of the apple. You're just going to keep going and going. It's going to be amazing. One bite of the tree. Yeah. You're all grown up.